Hey, what's up everybody? It's Chris here for the Future, and today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm joined by Marc Posch, and we're going to be talking about strategy. And to give you a little context as to what's going on, the reason why we're having this whole conversation to begin with is Marc sent me an angry message, and I'm going to read a little bit of it to you guys here, and it sounds something like this. This has been edited so that it's suitable for all ages, right? He says something like this: sorry, but I feel more and more like I don't belong to this group. This group being the members in our pro group on Facebook. This strategy thinking, as valuable as it is too domineering, and for some used as an excuse to enter the creative industry, which still is called so for a reason. And this was a very strong reaction, and it's something that I normally don't do, but I picked up my phone, I called Marc, and I said, hey Marc, you're upset, let's talk. So you guys, in this episode, we're going to get into this whole idea about strategy as it relates to the creative field. Is it hype? Or for some, it's hope. Stick around. You've run a very successful design agency for over 2 decades. We're 2 old dogs, and we went to the same school, we had the same pedigree, studied graphic design and packaging, and you've been very successful, and you've seen your career go up and downs like everybody, peaks and valleys. Yep. But we're entering into, I don't know, particularly challenging times. And I think the great disruptor of our time, the internet, it's changed a lot of things. It's given the world access to lots of people and creatives, and software and technology has kind of disrupted everything that we do. And so you're trying to figure out, what's your role? I mean, are you with the times? Are the times too trendy? All these kind of things, lots of questions. So I'm going to give everybody here a little context to this conversation, and I'm going to introduce my friend and founder of the school via video. I found a little clip of his, and oddly enough, it begins with the slate, strategy, Smategy.
So in a lot of companies, strategy is kind of a bad word, you know. Some of us don't even know what it means. I didn't know what it meant, you know, early on in my career. And for all we care, it's a bunch of wasted meetings that are boring and they don't really yield any actionable results. That's what usually happens in companies or in agencies or even in your own company. Some of us that are designers or developers, we say, this is not my job. You know, this is somebody else's job to come up with the strategy. I just want to build and do the stuff. So in the traditional project, the brief, the instructions come from a client. They're given to the agency or to the development agency. You don't have control of the brief. It's coming from someone else. But what happens if the client doesn't have a brief? Where do you start? I mean, I don't know. Where do you begin? And worse is, what happens if you have multiple stakeholders and multiple decision makers and you don't have a brief? And on web projects, Jesus, here's a good one. What happens if it's a website and all the stakeholders want every possible, you know, this feature? You know, I want this and I want that because there's different departments and you know how it goes. And that's awful. Here's the big one. What happens if it's you? What happens if you're the person doing the project and you need to talk to designers and developers or whoever it is to design the stuff for you? You know, how do you come up with a brief? So the starting point is you really define it, right? You have to have a common objective to aim at. The question is, how do you do that? Do you have a way of doing that? Do you do it with your feelings? You know, here's what I feel. Oh, do you guesstimate? Oh, this might be the right thing and try a bunch of things. Do you lay down the law and you demand this is what it should be because I'm smart? You know, how do you get from point A to point B? How do you come up with a brief, a roadmap, a plan, you know, something that you can give, you know, the team that's going to do something for you? So the answer is strategy. You know, strategy is getting from point A to point B, coming up with a plan, a framework, a guide for your journey, whatever you want to call it. That's what strategy is. Here's a question. How do the teams do that? You know, sometimes they argue. Sometimes, you know, they say, hey, let's have a strategic offside. You know, that's a famous one. But the problem is that no one likes that because it takes forever. And they're usually pretty damn boring. I've been to them. Here's the kicker, though. No one even follows whatever the strategic roadmap said. People just do whatever they want anyway. Mostly because you're giving those people the stuff after you did the strategy, and you didn't include them in the strategy. How many designers getting invited to the strategic retreat by executives? Probably very few, if none.
Okay, so you guys know Jose. He's been on the show, and a friend of mine. The things that Jose speaks about on the video that you just saw Did they say anything to you? Did any of that resonate with you? Which part? Go ahead.
The part about multiple stakeholders all wanting a million different things.
Yep. And which stakeholder are you in that?
I'm the one trying to juggle what they want.
Okay. And would you, I hear the mm-hms and the noddings and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so the whole multiple stakeholder, that rang true. What else?
Starting your strategy with the common objective.
Mm-hmm. That would help with the multiple stakeholder part. We don't have a common objective. And something he said too was really true for me, which was nobody follows it anyways. There's a bias against reading these briefs and these marketing things that have been written by somebody who's never done a creative thing, right? Who's never had to execute their own marketing brief. Most of them have too many words. They're several hundred pages long, and I think sometimes it's just to justify a cost and the number of people thrown at it. I've read some of these that people have paid millions of dollars to make, and it boggles my mind. It just boggles my mind.
I have had multiple situations in the past that the person that actually created the brief have never studied advertising or anything in advertising.
Let's get into it. So what is your first problem with this whole talk about strategy? Is it a buzzword? Haven't we been doing this the whole time?
Yeah, well, first I almost want to take a step back on because the word strategy gets kicked around, like design gets kicked around, and everybody has a different. That's we had a few questions earlier. What is your strategy? And it's like, well, strategy can be anything. I mean, it can be like brushing your teeth can include a strategy, like opening the cap and putting like a letter. This is. We need to define what strategy. What are we actually talking about? What strategy is? Strategy in my industry is, and I think it's something that's important. That's always part of the design business. We can't extract it, we can't remove it, otherwise we just create shiny objects. For me, strategy supports the design and not vice versa. So we had a discussion earlier about where design is an afterthought. To me, it's the other way around.
It's very interesting to me that you say strategy is an afterthought for you. People talk about research as strategy, but research means a lot of different things to a lot of people too. For students of mine, research meant I'm going to look at a bunch of things that later I'm going to steal, borrow, and cobble together. For some people, research means I'm going to find data that supports my point of view so I can convince the client that this is the correct approach. Your customers don't want this, they want this. One of the key things to being, to me, a great designer and somebody who can solve problems is to have empathy, to understand what it's like for the other person, in this case the end user, what it's like for them to use the product, the interface. Is it intuitive? Is it ergonomic? Is it beautiful? Is it clear? And I find that a lot of designers actually have very low empathy. All they care about is themselves, their portfolio. How does this make my work look? Is this stretching my creative boundaries? Is this pushing the limits that I'm trying to get done?
Sorry, yeah. To me, it's important to actually justify design, to convince a client that a certain aesthetic or a certain product is helpful to reach an audience. And we start from empathy, very important, to understanding where the audience is, what their needs are, and then actually selling it to the client as what methods, what products, what actions are needed to accomplish this. From classical design all the way to computational design, classical design, design thinking, computational design. So our business is in flux. I mean, this is constantly evolving. You can't say, okay, the design process includes step A, step B, step C, because it may not be applicable tomorrow. It's very difficult to find a formula here.
I want to circle back to the word justify. Like, we need things to justify our decisions, right? We need research, we need strategy to justify.
Well, it's your helper, actually. I mean, otherwise...
I'm just trying to figure out the word you use. In school, we were told that you need to learn how to communicate, to be a persuasive communicator, to justify your design, to win that creative war with your clients.
Well, they say design is art with a commercial purpose. So that in mind, there's always kind of this layer of what we do actually serves something. It sells something. It supports something. It does something. It's not just pretty. It's not just something that has a message. It actually is a selling tool. That should always be in the back of people's head when they design something.
We live for the reveal. It's called the reveal, you guys. If you've not done so, definitely go out and read the Win Without Pitching Manifesto written by Blair Enns. Okay, the reveal is the magic. And it's like we pull off the covers and it's this beautiful, amazing thing. And when it goes well, our clients shower with praise. Hail us as the best thing since sliced bread. And we get their adulation and adoration, and it's wonderful. And sometimes when we go like this, the expression is like, oh, when you said cool, simple, refined, I thought this. And this has nothing to do with that. Then guess what? Justification comes out. This is what your customers want. This is what, and it keeps going on like that. So it says that if we want to be positioned as experts and be seen as such, that we got to move away from the ta-da to something that's much less exciting, to the here it is. And then the clients say, of course, of course.
Can I ask something real quick? How many of you start with a questionnaire when you meet the clients? Like, do you have a list? See, we have a few hands raising. Yeah, beautiful. See, this is to me part of a strategy. How do you define the scope, the objectives, and all this, which is just essential for creating something. I mean, whatever we do, it has to have a purpose. It has to have there has to be a problem, and only to get to the bottom of it, you have to ask the questions. You have to find out what the source, what the underlying source. Maybe even sometimes go beyond what the client thinks about the problem, because to bypass a certain bias. This is, and we'll probably all agree that this is where strategy is very helpful, and to deliver a job that actually does something useful.
So here's the thing, though. I don't doubt that a lot of people start with some kind of informal or formal set of questions. The thing that I'm going to get into is, what are those questions and what are you trying to get at? Because again, the kinds of questions you ask control the whole conversation. Mm-hmm. So what is it that you're looking for? Okay, and we can get into all this. I've written down justify, formula, questions. And before you know it, I think you're going to make my argument for me. I feel like you're going to. Does it feel like that, ladies and gentlemen?
I'm just warming. I'm just warming up.
I'm about to,
just warming up here too.
Do closing statement here, and I've only just gotten warmed up. I've not even opened yet. I'm going to close in a second here. You remember, you're not supposed to help me along the way. Dan, you're going to say something. You have to say into the mic.
So you just said it, Mark. We're solving a problem. So what mechanisms are we going to use to solve the problem?
Yeah.
And I think in our traditional design training, it was create 100 ideas.
Yeah.
So you blow out 75 of the worst ones, and then concentrate on the last 25 to try to find something great.
Yeah.
Okay. And what I see core or discovery as a process to try to help us get there to solve the problem in a shorter distance.
Yeah.
In a methodology that seems smarter and more accurate than the methodology than just creating a bunch of ideas.
Design thinking comes in the game, and people all of a sudden realize, well, if we label the process of research, of strategy, if we call this design thinking, create a little bit of drama around it, we can actually charge extra for it, and it has become like a big topic that people are selling as part of their process. But again, design thinking to me has always been part of the process, and should not be kind of a surprising new feature.
Okay, let's forget about the labels. Let's forget about whether we call it strategy, discovery, design thinking, core, let's forget about what that is, because the labels I think can misdirect us from talking about what it is. So let's dive in a little bit deeper. What Blair is talking about is, instead of the ta-da, which is here's the big reveal, the magic, I'm a genius, aren't I? You didn't see this coming, did you? Versus like, of course. Of course sounds to me like a natural progression of a series of conversations and discussions and discoveries together, that at the end, of course you like purple tulips, because you told me you like purple, and roses are a cliche, and you grew up in Holland, and this is what you want. That's a radically, fundamentally different way of designing than the way I was taught, the way I practiced design for 2 decades. Do you feel like there's a difference, you understand the difference, and now we're going to talk about that.